Hello, everyone. Thank you for stopping by and supporting this channel. I was listening to one of Jehovah Witnesses talks, and I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous, hateful, and it should be considered as a crime where the governing body is putting themselves out to the entire world, but mostly to Jehovah's Witnesses. There's no evidence by any scholar, historian, that the members, what you call the governing body, ever existed after Christ died. There is no evidence. I took 20 minutes of a talk to break it down. They was trying to use Jerusalem after Christ died and risen, when he foretold the destruction of Jerusalem and the first temple. Now, in this talk, you're going to hear how they compare the fake governing bodies was helping the Christians by encouraging them to wait till they give them permission to leave Jerusalem before the Roman army come back and finally capture Jerusalem. But in the beginning of this talk, you'll learn that there's no way Jehovah's Witnesses religion, or we call Watchtower, would know every single detail, because the Bible doesn't say. But they get it almost pinpoint accuracy from other sources outside the religion, but they don't tell the truth when they apply the governing body members. So let's get into this, and hope you got a stomach for it, because it's messed up. It's making the whole world to believe God chosen these pedophile governing body members. Now, I'm not saying they molested any children, no, but they allowed other people in the religion, elders, minister servants, fathers, stepfathers, to molest children under the two witness rule. So that's what makes them disgusting and filthy. So let's get into this. Oops. Okay.
Until finally, in 66 CE, a corrupt Roman governor named Florus, who's been extorting money from the Jews for years now, Governor Florus gets greedy, and he claims that the Jews owe him a large amount of money in back taxes. And without any type of negotiation, without any for any response, Florus simply sends a garrison of soldiers to Jerusalem, to the temple, and they go in and they seize 17 talents in back taxes. Now, when he does that, the Jews go wild. Jewish rebels swarm into Jerusalem and slaughter the Roman forces there.
See, there's no way this elder and Watchtower would have got this information unless they stole it, like other stuff they do. They stole it from people who had done research in Jerusalem and what really happened in 70 AD. Watchtower was clueless as the elder who's giving this talk, using outside sources to find out what happened when Jesus predicted the end of Jerusalem. Let's continue.
They actually declare war. Judea and Rome are now at war. The fuse has been lit, and all of this is leading up to the initial fulfillment of Matthew 24:15 and the parallel in Luke 21:20. Because within 3 months of that very event is when Cestius Gallus marches into Judea with 30,000 troops in tow. And he only has one mission: crush this rebellion. But that's his objective. And he's poised to do that. And coincidentally, his army arrives during the Festival of Booths. So Judea and Jerusalem in particular is at maximum capacity. And within days of his arrival, things happen fast. Roman soldiers actually begin to undermine the temple wall. And the Jews are horrified because pagan soldiers are now defiling Judaism's holiest site. And the disgusting thing is soon going to be standing in their holy place. And Christians are recalling Jesus' words. When you see this happen, take action. Be obedient. Start fleeing to the mountains. And this time, this is the real deal. There is no more speculating. How long was Cestius Gallus and his Roman soldiers there? Now you can imagine the first day of the siege. And then a second day goes by day 2, and supplies are getting cut off. You might be wondering and thinking to yourself, hey, I have to get out of here. I have to flee right now.
Here comes the nonsense. Wait for it. Wait for it.
But at that critical moment, in the heat of the situation, what would the body of older men say? What direction would be received from the channel that Jehovah is using to help his people survive? What would they say? In short, what would the governing body say? Well, at that critical moment, they'd say, wait, don't go now. To go now would be suicide. Plus, those taking the lead have full confidence in the rest of the prophecy that those days would be cut short on account of the chosen ones. So the governing body says, wait.
And like I said earlier, there is no evidence, no historian, nowhere mention a governing body members as they are today in Jehovah's Witnesses religion. It is made up crap to fool Jehovah's Witnesses. And I know I was fooled. A bunch of us who left realize there is nothing to fear from these men because they are false prophets, they are liars, they are con artists, they are scammers like the ones in India that caused United States and different countries, Canada, UK, to scam people out of their money. That is what the governing bodies are. Scammers. Christian fake scammers. Out to get everybody's money, homes, jewelry, everything. They ain't no different from the people who takes $15,000, $20,000, $80,000 from old people. These people, these governing body members are nothing but trash. Let's continue.
But then the third day goes by. The fourth day goes by. They're there for 5 days. This is the longest week of your life. And then on day 6, they actually undermine the temple wall. And the governing body says, wait. But now by this point, maybe you're thinking, independently, maybe even as an independent family head, yeah, but Jesus said to flee. But at this point, to be direct, it really doesn't matter what we think as an independent thinker.
I just thought of something. Was any of the 12 apostles was still there? Did Jesus call them or change their name from his apostles to the governing body members? How can any other men, older men, would be more spirits or spiritual than the 12 apostles? Did the 12 apostles arise and call themselves governing body members? Think about it while you're hearing this garbage. Think about it.
Because if we're going to be survivors, there's only one game in town. There's only one channel that Jehovah's using to get his people to safety. That's the governing body. And if they were going to survive the last days of that system of things, they needed to be in the habit of listening to and obediently cooperating with direction provided by that channel, the governing body. Now, we look back in history and we have the benefit of looking in our rearview mirror. What happened in this intense moment? Well, all of a sudden, and for no apparent reason, the Romans retreated. And once the Romans pulled away, there was a window of opportunity. Obedient Christians could now begin fleeing to the mountains. And that was key to their survival. They survived the last days of that system of things because they listened and obeyed. So
to who? What Jesus told his apostles to spread to Judah, or did the apostles told the governing body and the governing body overrule what Jesus said, wait for their words to flee? Forget about Jesus' words. Just listen to our words. We'll tell you when to leave. People, which is superior? Jesus' words and the Bible, or these fake governing body members pretending they was the future of the governing bodies today, and while fake ones that never existed was in Judea, in Jerusalem? Think about it, people. Let's continue with this garbage.
The question to each of us, what about me? Am I willing to listen to and wait on the governing body today? Because right now we love to speculate. We want to figure it all out. COVID-19, global pandemic, is this the end? But when it comes, when the end comes, it will look like there's absolutely no way out. It'll look like we're trapped behind the walls in Jerusalem and with the Roman army encamped around us. And if it didn't look that way, it wouldn't follow the pattern. That's why we know that obedience is the key. And that's why we can conclude that our obedience, perhaps now or in the near future, may be tested. Now, we look back, though, on this historical account, and there are numerous textbooks that have been written and discussing why the Romans pulled away in 66 CE.
And you just heard what he said. Textbooks that people did true research on Jerusalem. They went through these textbooks to find out what caused the racket of the Jews and the Romans. Watchtower had no clue. They was clueless. But they won't tell you all this information they got. The true date of Jerusalem was 587 BC, which they make it Jehovah's Witnesses clueless to stick with their fake 607 BC. And evidence prove Nebuchadnezzar's father was still alive. He died 605 BC. People, Watchtower knows when the true date Jerusalem was destroyed, but they don't want to lose the 1914 prophecy of Charles T. Russell. Otherwise, Jehovah's Witnesses will pack the bags and leave. Let's continue with this garbage.
And every one of these textbooks ends the same way. It doesn't matter who was the author of it. It doesn't matter if a military strategist, an analyst, a historian wrote the textbook. They all conclude that nobody knows why the Romans pulled away. But we do. Jehovah did it on account of the chosen ones. Those who survived the tribulation that came just a few years later in 70 CE, they did so because they were already in the habit of listening to and obediently following the direction of the governing body. Now for us today, just what form our flight might take in the future, all of that remains to be seen. And we don't know if we'll be told to go to the basement, to the attic, or to shelter in place. We don't know any of that. But what we do know, to survive the...
Yeah, you might have to hide Jehovah's Witnesses because of the evil crimes Watchtower brainwash you to do and what they cover up in your religion. Everybody is stepping up. Countries are stepping up gradually to shut you down for the evil deeds of Watchtower and way some of you members are hurting children. So you better hide. But guess what? No matter where you hide, they're going to find you. And they don't find you. Christ and his Father will find you just like that. And you will pay for the crimes, governing body, for keeping this fake religion and not freeing Jehovah's Witnesses from this false religion. Just like the governments in the Bible says, he would take his true people out and bring them home. And no governments would be able to stop that procedure. So Watchtower, you better let Jehovah's Witnesses go. They're not the chosen ones. They're just innocent people that you brainwash and corrupt. Let's continue.
Coming great tribulation, we need to be in the habit of listening to and obeying the direction of the governing body. Not just in the future at some critical moment, but that needs to be our pattern of life right now. Because the truth of the matter is, when it came to our first century brothers and sisters, while faithful disciples took action and survived, Jesus foretold that not everyone who was aware of this prophecy would. Turn to Luke 19 and notice his prophetic comment on that. Now, Luke 19, beginning in verse 43. And as you turn to Luke 19 and we start with verse 43, keep in mind, we're no longer talking about the events in 66 CE. But no, now we're upon the end of that Jewish system of things. Jesus is talking about what would happen right at the end. Here's what he foretold. Luke 19, verse 43. And because the days will come upon you, when your enemies will build around you a fortification of pointed stakes, and will encircle you and besiege you from every side. That is precisely what happened down to the detail when General Titus arrived in 70 CE. Within a matter of a few days, his soldiers not only camped around Jerusalem this time, but they built a literal wall, a fortification.
See, the Bible gives clues, but Watchtower had to get all this information from other sources to make this talk like the government body has wisdom. I'm sorry, people. Those 8 leaders has no common sense, all combined to a stupid roach, which has more intelligence than all those 8 men. Because they know they are misleading Jehovah's Witnesses deliberately. I would have more respect for a roach than those 8 men, truthfully.
Of pointed stakes, and now escape was impossible. So what would it have been like if you were a Christian in the first century who didn't obediently follow direction, who didn't seize the window of opportunity to flee to the mountains? What would have happened if you were still in Jerusalem, trapped behind the walls in 70 CE when Titus was on the scene? Well, Jesus foretold what it would be like. Look at the next verse, verse 44. And they will dash you and your children within you to the ground, and they will not leave a stone upon a stone in you, because you did not discern the time of your being inspected. Regrettably, many who heard Jesus' words, who were aware of this prophecy, lost their lives because they didn't put the pieces together, because they didn't obediently follow direction.
Yeah, let's use that for example. We have been told on the internet, the news, the media, the evil in Jehovah's Witnesses religion. But we don't want to get out. We want to stay in. And your point, Mr. Elder? Jehovah's Witnesses is just like those people who stayed in Jerusalem, didn't follow the warning. Just like Jehovah's Witnesses not following the warning to get out of their religion. Let's continue.
Now, what's all of that tell us up to this point? Well, we can look back in history, and history proves, and we can prove by means of history, that Matthew 24 had an initial fulfillment during the last days of that Jewish system of things, between 33 and 70 CE. But as we look back in history, especially our modern day history, it proves something else. We can see tangible evidence that Jesus' prophecy is seeing a greater global fulfillment right now in our day. And as Jehovah's people, we're very familiar with this prophecy, in which Jesus clearly describes events that are leading up to the end of this system. And things like we just read about. Now, we see wars, we see famine, earthquakes, violence, and yes, we see pestilence, we see pandemics, COVID-19. And yet when we present this evidence to others, there are still skeptics. Some have doubts, and some will even
skeptic and doubts of this being the true religion? Oh, yeah!
Argue. And they'll say, as we point to these things as an indicator of where we're at in the stream of time, they will argue and say, well, mankind has experienced these things forever, since humans were created. evidence, and we know that this period, this time of the end, is unique. Because all these things that Jesus mentioned are occurring at the same time with growing scope and intensity. So for any that we come across who are maybe skeptical, or for those who have lingering doubts about where we are in the stream of time, maybe we can illustrate it this way.
Here it comes. You're going to enjoy this one.
Just set the prophecy aside for a moment and just imagine that right now, at this particular instance, you have a severe headache. And while it's bringing you great discomfort, you're not overly consumed by it. You're not overly worried by the severity of the headache because you've had bad headaches in the past and you always recover. Or instead of a severe headache, let's say that right now you're experiencing chest pains. But even at that, you're not overly consumed because you've experienced that in the past and it's never brought you any lasting harm. Or one more. Let's say that you're experiencing that unpleasant feeling of being nauseous right now. And as unpleasant as it is, you don't like the experience. You felt that in the past, but it too eventually goes away. But now for just a moment, imagine that you have all three of those symptoms at once. That you're experiencing a severe headache, chest pains, and you're feeling nauseous. You have all three of those symptoms at the exact same moment. And we're experiencing them at 100 times the intensity that we normally do. Now would we be concerned? Now would we be trying to get help? Absolutely. Why? Because all of those symptoms combined would be evidence that something serious was happening. And that's exactly what happens during these last days. All these things that Jesus described occur at once with growing scope and magnitude, and they serve to prove one simple thing. The end is near. Both the Bible and history provide evidence that the major fulfillment of Matthew 24 is occurring right now. But Jehovah, being the loving God that he is, he wants his people to be informed. So he not only provided, by means of his son Christ Jesus, events that we could look for that would indicate that we were living in the last days, but he used other faithful servants and to pen his thoughts regarding the attitudes that would also demonstrate and prove that we were living in the last days. So we look at all these events and we can check the boxes. What attitudes would be prevalent? And that would tell us where we are in the stream of time. Turn to 2 Timothy chapter 3. And as you just skim the opening verse of verse 1, and Jehovah starts this prophecy with an emphatic statement. He tells us, but know.
Remember he mentioned about skimming over certain verses? That's what they do. They don't put the whole chapter in context to get the true meaning to one paragraph. And other false religions and cults does the same thing.
This, that the last days it would be critical times, hard to deal with. He says, know this. And that means, that's his approval, his guarantee that what he says next is going to come true. So what attitudes would we expect? What attitudes would prevail among mankind today? Well, look at the long list starting in verse 2. And men would be lovers of themselves. Check, we see that. Lovers of money, boastful, haughty.
And that's the governing body. They're lovers of themselves. Otherwise, they would not allow this fake religion continuing to this day. They have no hearts, no sympathy, only pride and greed.
Blasphemers and disobedient to parents, unthankful, disloyal, having no natural affection, not open to any agreement, slanderers, without self-control, fierce, without love of goodness,
That's Watchtower.
betrayers, headstrong, puffed up with pride, lovers of pleasures rather than lovers of God.
Governing body.
Now, in our current situation, one trip out for essential supplies, and we're likely to encounter the majority, if not all, of these attitudes on just a single trip. But these last days are critical. And we know that they're hard to deal with. But that's the beauty of verse 1. Jehovah does tell us the last days will be hard to deal with. But he does not say that they would be impossible to deal with. We can survive the last days. How? Well, by means of Jehovah's help.
No, your Jehovah can't save you. And no, if you don't leave this false religion, I'm sorry, but you're going to perish with it. That's the reason Jesus warning in Revelation, get out of her, my people, if you do not want to share her plagues. And her plague says she's going to be destroyed. Jehovah's Witness, your religion is going to be destroyed. Do you want to be in with it or out like we are? Your choice.
And through his Holy Spirit, through our congregated family, we can be survivors. But if we're going to survive, it'll take the same thing that it took of our first century brothers and sisters. We need to obediently take action. Of course, when it comes to action, we've been somewhat confined. We've been on restricted movement, no more public ministry currently. So what could we be doing right now?
Here it
During
comes.
this unique period of time, we know we're deep in the last days, the last of the last days. What could we be doing right now that would give us a greater opportunity to ensure that we would be a survivor of the last days? And to answer that, go to 2 Peter chapter 3. And Peter draws this inspired conclusion and gives us specific advice. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 11. Notice his comment. Since all these things are to be dissolved in this way, consider what sort of people you ought to be in holy acts of conduct and deeds of godly devotion. If we're going to survive, it's absolutely essential that we work on our conduct and our devotion. And think about what those taking the lead, what the governing body has provided to us. They've given us the tools not only to survive.
No, they gave us tools to be brainwashed. They gave us tools to disown our family and friends. They gave us tools to let our loved ones to die when they almost running out of blood. Those are the tools that these evil men have given us.